Hi everybody, John Cena here and welcome back to FunkQuest. We have a diplomatic special edition for you today. So I wanted to say, John, who are you and where are you dialing in from?
My name's John Everard. I'm a former diplomat and I'm dialing in from central London.
Central London, that's not very exciting. We want to talk about small things further afield.
The rules of FunkQuest are simple. Each Funkster selects one of 4 icons. Behind each icon is a question which may or may not have anything to do with the icon. The Funkster then has 1 minute to tell a story, tell a joke, or maybe even answer the question.
John, it's just you and me. You've got 2 minutes per question. Parrot, some books, some boots, or some ladies running.
Okay, I'll go for the parrot.
Parrot. I know nothing about the diplomatic service. How do you communicate with your boss?
You wander around to their office, you knock on their door, they say cheerfully, come in, you smile sweetly, and you say what you've got to say. It works pretty much the same as with any other organisation, I guess.
Is your boss there, or are you in London, or how does that all work?
It depends. If you're an ambassador, then your boss is back in London, and you communicate by email, by written communications of various kinds. Sometimes phone calls, but secure phone calls tend to be a bit difficult and a bit clunky. And of course, when you're back in London, you go and see him or her.
See him, yeah. So you've been UK ambassador to North Korea and Uruguay, is that right?
That's right.
You're in North Korea. Phone calls are a bit, can be tapped. How secure is life in North Korea?
Physical security, very, very good. You're never going to be mugged in North Korea. It's one of the safest places on earth. But of course, the North Koreans watch you all the time. What do you expect? So you need to assume that if they can eavesdrop on a conversation, they will. You have to be very careful who you meet, where you meet, and when you meet.
So would you be in your office thinking, I've got to pick, am I talking in a code, or am I talking normal, or am I suspecting that somebody's listening to this? How does it impact on like we're talking now, how would it impact on that?
If you're talking on a phone, it means that you've rigged up a secure line. Right. And you can talk normally, don't need to talk in circumlocutions or anything like that. Yeah. But you just want to make sure that that line really is secure and that you're talking somewhere where you can't be overheard.
You can put some camels, a camera, a castle, or a clock.
I'll go for the castle, thank you.
The castle. How did your previous jobs prepare you for this one?
They took me through a whole range of different experiences. How to write quickly under pressure and to write sharp, as they say. How to deal with lots of difficult people. How to operate in quite alien environments, talking foreign languages most of the time. And how to put up with a lot of physical stress. Diplomacy is tiring. I mean, you in bad times in diplomacy, you're working under constant sleep deprivation. You're probably jet lagged. One of the ways in which previous postings prepare you is they kind of toughen you up physically. You learn to operate when you're really very, very tired. And a lot of diplomacy depends on that.
So it sounds like it's quite a stressful job.
Yes, it is. Diplomats as a profession have a very high suicide rate, very high rate of alcoholism. It's also good.
Yeah, I hope you're all right. I mean, we'll talk about cycling in a few moments. I mean, what do you think when you've got foreign diplomats, you've got foreign dignitaries? What are you thinking? I'm just going to do my job. Are you nervous? Or you think I'm representing the Queen or the King? What goes through you? How do you kind of most people think I'm just going to work? Well, that's not like you.
If you're worth anything as a diplomat, you know before you go into the meeting pretty much what's going to happen, and you know exactly what you're going to say. So you've probably rehearsed this in your head a few times, and off you go. And it's certainly in North Korea, I mean, you can hazard a pretty good guess at what they're going to say in reply. So you take careful note, and you tell London what it that they do say. If you are hosting of visiting a British dignitary, because quite a lot of diplomacy is facilitating high-level meetings, then again, unless you have a kind of courier death wish, you have mapped out every last detail of that person's program. You pressed a button and you're running with it. And frankly, at those moments, the adrenaline is flowing so fast that you don't really get time or energy to think of anything much else.
So you've got a, let's say an MP going on a trade mission. You've got a thing of what they're going to do from minute one to minute, they walk and they get on the plane to go home, everything.
Pretty much, yes. I mean, you need to build in some free time, partly because nobody, you or the MP, can keep going all the time, 24 hours. But also because things go wrong in programs. It's stressful when it happens, but it does happen, especially in places like Latin America, where you have to adapt to the fact that in some Latin American cultures, people will simply turn up late or not turn up at all, or somebody different will turn up from the person you thought was going to turn up. And you just have to run with the ball when it comes.
You can pick question 3, some roast potatoes, some purple dolls, a group of elephants, or a fire.
Okay, let's go for the heffalumps.
The heffalumps. What jobs have you done previously and subsequently?
I've done all kinds of jobs in international relations, but my work with the Foreign Office was my first full-time job. Subsequently, I was an academic. I was a fellow at Stanford University, and I went to work for the United Nations Security Council for nearly a couple of years, running the sanctions regime against North Korea. So again, international relations, though in a different context.
So you're a cyclist. I mean, is there a cycling culture in North Korea? Do you talk about cycling? What do you talk about?
A lot of North Koreans do cycle because, I mean, very few people in North Korea have cars, of course. Public transport, especially outside Pyongyang, is very unreliable. In a lot of places, it simply doesn't exist. So how are you going to get around? You get yourself a bicycle. In North Korea, not so many years ago, relations between North Korea and Japan were reasonably good. And the North Koreans imported a lot of second-hand Japanese bicycles. And they still roam around North Korea, carrying people, carrying loads. A lot of collective farm workers load their bicycles up with farm produce and cycle off somewhere to try to get a better price for them. So a lot of cycling goes on in North Korea.
Oh, yeah. So you were the ambassador when they did their first nuclear tests. How did you get notified about that? Did they ring you up, or did you see it on the paper?
No, that was a weird event. Just by pure fluke, on the day of the first nuclear test, I was with my German colleague because the German embassy in Pyongyang had decided to celebrate German National Day that day. It wasn't actually the National Day. They celebrated a couple of days late for whatever reason. And we were all in the big kind of party room in the German embassy. And my German colleague was sitting at the high table with a North Korean vice minister next to him. And for some reason, I forgot now what it was, I had to go back to my embassy, which is actually in the same building as the German embassy, to go and check something. And I thought, as I'm here, I'll just check the BBC News. And there it was, that the North Koreans, while we had been celebrating German National Day, they detonated a nuclear bomb. So I thought, what am I going to do here? I printed out the report and I went downstairs with it, back to the party, went up to the high table and simply put it in front of my German colleague, the German ambassador. And he sort of half looked at it. Then I stood back a bit. It's impolite to stand over people's conversations, isn't it? But I could see him doing a double take. And he sort of grabbed this and turned around furious to the North Korean to his right, to the vice minister. And I could see he was saying, oh, what do you guys think you're doing? And the vice minister, like a good North Korean, simply pretended that nothing was happening, stared into the middle distance and refused to answer. And that was how we found out about the nuclear test.
What a cool story. So you presumably you hang around with the Germans and the French and the Dutch because you've got something in common with them.
Well, yes, except there are no French and no Dutch in Pyongyang. Not everybody has an embassy there. But the Germans, the Swedes, yes. At the time, the United Kingdom was a member of the European Union. And part of the EU rulebook is that EU ambassadors have to meet once a week to compare notes, coordinate positions, that kind of thing. So we did that. And also we saw a fair amount of each other socially. I mean, the foreign community in Pyongyang is not very big. So you get to know your diplomatic colleagues really quite well.
John, question 4, first aid kit, some purple flowers, a green tractor, or a grey sofa?
Let's go for the grey sofa.
The grey sofa. I think we might touch on this so far. What is the most frustrating part of the job?
It depends a lot where you are. Each country has got its own frustrations. In North Korea, the biggest frustration was not being able to talk to all the North Koreans you wanted to talk to. I mean, you could ask for a meeting with senior North Korean officials, and very often you simply wouldn't get a reply, or you might just get a no. Getting hold of senior North Koreans was actually quite difficult. In Uruguay, the frustrations are quite different. Whereas North Korea, whereas the regime there kind of holds you at arm's length, it likes you to be there because it likes the idea of having embassies, but it doesn't actually want you to find out much about itself. In Uruguay, you've got the equal and opposite problem that everybody wants to talk to you. Everybody wants you to come to their party. And you found that, a lot of evenings, you had 4, 5 invitations to different events. You couldn't possibly go to all of them. And you end up kind of skipping from one to the other and trying to work out how to handle yourself in such a way that people weren't too disappointed that you didn't make it to their event. After all, they're being nice to you and you don't want to let them down. Yeah. But it did mean that evenings in Uruguay tended to start early and finish very, very late. It's quite a tiring place to work.
Yeah, I would imagine. That was one of my questions, actually. We see Uruguay on the TV. We see Uruguay in the World Cup and people like Luis Suarez. How different is it to us, to a Western country, and how different is it to North Korea?
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, Uruguay is a Western country. Spanish-speaking, functioning democracy, free press. It works in a way that isn't the same. You'd recognise the mechanics, and they're friendly, and they like talking to Western European ambassadors because, Uruguay is one of us. I mean, it's a fellow democracy. They're on the side of the angels, but they are a long way away from everything, and they like just to ask you. Ask for your take on events in Europe, on events quite often in North America, and what do you make of what's going on, which is good. I mean, you can have lots of interesting conversations over good, strong Uruguayan coffee.
When people ask you what you think, do you have to think, well, hang on, what I think doesn't really matter, or do you give them an opinion?
It depends on what the subject is. I mean, sometimes. London have said, do try to persuade the Uruguayans of this or that point of view. So you get into a kind of debate with them, and you try to change their minds. But if they're just asking for your personal opinion on events that aren't necessarily too sensitive, you share with them what you know, and you can talk quite freely and not directed.
Question 5: you can pick a robin, Spitfire, flower basket, or duck.
I'll go for the flower basket, please.
Flower basket. What made you want to quit?
Easy. The Foreign Office was going through what they charmingly called a decapitation exercise. They discovered simply they had too many ambassadors, and they were offering a really good package to anybody who was prepared to sign up just to leave early. And I thought, I've been ambassador 3 times. I could stay on, and I could be ambassador in bigger places, and maybe be a foreign service director. But do I really want to do this for the rest of my life, the rest of my career? And I thought, no, there's other things out there. So I decided just to take the money, as they used to say on a popular quiz show, and go off and do something different, and did.
So you've been working with the Youth Hostel Association. Tell us about that.
Yes, I spent a year on the board of Youth Hostel Association at a time when we were turning the organisation round. I mean, the Youth Hostel Association is a venerable British charity, and because it's been around for so long, I think people tend to kind of take it for granted. But what it does in terms of getting particularly inner city kids out in the countryside, I mean, you'd be astounded as to how many kids from inner cities have never actually seen a cow. Is really, really important. It transforms lives, and it does so really, really well. So I was very happy to support it, to give what time I could to it, and I like to think to help it through one of the choppier moments in its history.
A reimagination, a rebirth, if you like, from, like you said, an older thing to a 21st century thing.
That's right. Of course, I left the board a while ago because I had to go to America to take up a fellowship at Stanford University. But now, of course, the Youth Hostel Association, like everybody else in hospitality, is facing real problems and real cash problems. So I just hope they make out.
And it stayed true to its principles of low cost accommodation in interesting parts of the world, which is funky.
That's right, it has. I mean, I cycle around the UK quite a lot, and whenever I can, I will always choose to stay in a YHA hostel, partly because they're such good value, but partly because you meet such interesting people there too.
Where have you been on your bike then, John? What's your latest expedition?
Well, my latest expedition was I rode Land's End to John O'Groats in July. 15 days, 1,760 odd kilometers, which was brilliantly timed. I mean, without planning it this way, I managed to cycle just ahead of the heat wave. So the weather was pleasantly warm, but I didn't actually get sort of fried to a cinder like so many people in London did.
And it took 17 days. That's pretty cool. Okay, an extra bonus question. Pick any icon you want, John. We don't care. Pick any icon.
Right, the one bank centre. Question 3, the Twin Dolls.
What motivates you to keep showing up and doing things like being on shows like this and cycling and doing all kinds of other cool stuff? What motivates you to keep showing up?
Well, showing up in shows, events, I'm fascinated by people. I like to be with people, and I love to hear them talk about what they know and about their lives. So that keeps me going for that. For cycling, it's a bit different. I tend to cycle alone, largely because if you cycle with somebody, it's hard to find somebody who cycles at exactly your speed. It's always a bit of a challenge. But I love the rhythm of cycling. I love cycling through nature, and I love the ability it gives me to visit all kinds of places under my own steam, to explore cities and the countryside and journey to get around.
Excellent. Did you have a bike in North Korea or Uruguay?
Yes, with the same bicycle. My bicycle is very well trained.
How do you get stuff, British stuff like newspapers and beans and stuff, to a foreign country, to the diplomatic embassy? Does it come on Her Majesty's, property, or how does it get there?
Depends where you are. For someone at North Korea, where you won't get anything except for diplomatic means, there's a kind of an add-on to Her Majesty's diplomatic mails where you're allowed to send letters, parcels, newspapers, that kind of thing. So you rely on that. I mean, for example, I was in Vienna for a year earlier in my career. In Vienna, you don't bother. You just go around to your local newsstand and you can buy British newspapers off the stand. Yeah.
John, thank you so much for being on the show. You are a funky thinker, and how can we find out more about you? And you've got a book, which I think is on order at our house. So how can we get that?
When I left North Korea, I did a deal with Stanford University that if they would take me on as a fellow, I would write a book and publish it through them. So the book, all about my experiences in North Korea and thoughts about the way that North Korea is called Only Beautiful Please. I think it's still available on Amazon. I hope people enjoy reading it.
John, thank you so much for being on the show, and we'll see you, listeners and viewers, next time. Thanks a lot, and take care.